choice. I control the amount of pee that exits my body by choice. No, I'm saying that I think I have like a weak bladder.
So it's like
slash the muscle that refrains from you pissing yourself.
You pee multiple rounds.
Yeah, it's like a boxing.
I want to walk through the whole thing. You go in there and you push on the pee muscle.
Are you recording right now?
You go in there.
God damn it!
You push on the pee muscle, and then pee starts coming out.
No, it's on a button. I don't press a button.
You have to like squeeze your pee muscle.
No, I don't squeeze it. Also, what is that hand motion?
You don't use your hands. I'm saying in like your Kegel muscle, like you push
Kegel
on
muscle. That's it. I have a
like
Kegel
you
muscle.
push on your pee muscle. That's what I'm saying.
No. The problem is that I don't push on it.
Like the pee just comes out on its own?
Yes.
Whoa. So you pull your pants down.
Yeah.
Or no, you pull your wiener out? Are you like, do you butters it or do you like pull your wiener out? Okay. So there's three options. You unzip and you pull your wiener out of the hole.
I never go for that.
You pull pants down to below your butter ankles.
I'm kidding. No.
Or you flip it over the top.
I pull it out. I pull my pants down slightly and then over the top. So there's some room. So there's room. So it's not holding it back.
That's normal.
My pants act as my Kegel muscle.
Then pee just comes out. You don't do anything.
Well, I mean, like there's some resistance that I have to fight. Like
you don't push the pee, like not with your hands, but like with the thing, the gooch. Yeah. It's like in your gooch, like 2 inches up from the gooch. There's a muscle.
Okay, you know how you
can squeeze, and then it makes your wiener go up and down. Or you can push on it, and then it makes pee come out.
You have a very versatile penis, or maybe this is normal for people. What I'm trying to say is that when I also, I just wanted to compliment you by telling you have a very versatile penis. But when I have to pee, pull out my penis. I pull out my pants, pull down my penis.
Yep.
Pull out my penis.
Yep.
And then, I'll know I have to pee, and then.
And the pee just comes out.
Well, I give it a little push, like a tiny push.
Yeah, that's what I'm, okay.
Small amount.
Small push, but you pushed on the pee muscle.
A little bit.
Okay, and then the pee comes out.
Well, it's not even pushing on a pee muscle. It's like I'm like allowing the pee muscle to relax.
Okay, fair enough. I'll give you that.
Yeah.
If there's a lot of pee.
Yeah.
That's what it is.
Sure.
And then when you're done, like the pee will just stop, right? And it'll sort of like
yeah.
And then you have that like squirt, split.
Yeah, that happens. That happens sometimes. Yeah.
And then you shake.
Yeah, or sometimes I'll do what I call a roundabout. I'm kidding. I just want to make this more complicated. Yeah, I'll do a few shakes, and then
you dab the tip of your wee-wee with toilet paper.
No. So it's not even like that, right? I don't dab it for safe measure. Like I'm not like, okay, good job. Like, oh, we're clean now. That's not what I'm saying.
Do you wrap it around because you know something's going to come out later on its own, like a penis head diaper?
Like there have been times where I've mummified my penis, yes, because more pee comes out. I dribble. I have a dribbling issue.
So okay, when you say you have a dribbling issue,
I'm saying that
it's like up to how long after you peed you'll just like bloop, bloop, like you're like a leaky faucet.
Yeah.
But how much longer after will that happen?
I mean, usually it's up to the discovery. You know, sometimes I might discover hours later, and I don't know how long it's been going on. It's not a lot.
So you'll just stand there for a little while.
Yes.
And just hold.
And I'll like a tube of toothpaste. Sometimes I'll just kind of work it out.
Just wring it out.
Yeah, I'll wring out the remaining pee. And
God, are you sure this is because you didn't know that you're actually supposed to push on your pee muscle to get all the pee out?
No. I do that each time. I try to do that.
Do you always have to poop, so then you don't want to actually poop your pants?
No.
Have you ever done this peeing sitting down? Has that changed anything?
Peeing sitting down actually often helps, but I still have to wring it out sometimes. Damn. Yeah, I think
you just have a fat pee hole, dude.
Welcome back. Your dreams were your ticket out. Welcome back to that same old place that you laughed about. Well, the names have all changed since you hung around, but those dreams have remained and they've turned around.
Well, that was 4 minutes of me trying to figure out how David goes to the bathroom. And I can't think of a better way to bring you guys into the third episode of Misaka. This is a process of David and I trying to look at our own lives and each other's lives in the same way that an anthropologist looks at human history. Seeing your own life as a series of iterations of yourself, a bunch of separate lives, just like an anthropologist would look back on human history and see humans getting to this point as a series of different types of human, and seeing how they've evolved and changed and progressed to create the modern human. We're trying to do the same things with our lives, and we're calling these different iterations Misakas. It's only going to get better from here, and I hope you guys enjoy episode 3.
And I know what a scene you were learning in. Was there something that made you come back again? And what could ever lead you? What could ever lead you? Back here where we need you. Back here where we need you. Yeah, we tease him a lot, 'cause we got him on the spot. Welcome back. Welcome back. Welcome back. Welcome back.
When was the first time that you questioned it? I want to say, like, if you were human,
Okay.
but I don't know if that's the right way to frame it. When was the first time you realized that there was this thing outside of where everyone else was living? Does that make sense? Like, that there was this sort of, like, this bigger thing outside of this sort of objective reality that everyone thinks that they're living in.
Okay.
Like if there's like a shared reality that everyone on Earth has sort of agreed that they're a part of.
Our consensual reality.
Yeah.
I mean, so there's a group of things that always helped, and they were dreams, video games, and experiences that I think would be, for most people, traumatic.
It's interesting to me that, first of all, you said helped. So it's you see it as a positive thing.
Yeah, certainly.
And then the second part, so when you say helped, you say helped you to see outside of this consensual reality that we all live in.
Right.
Okay.
I mean, early conversations helped. I liked going to school counselors and talking to them about things that were, now I'm seeing it was a little offhanded, but things that weren't related specifically to what you would see a counselor for, like when I was in elementary school. And that Fight Club-esque wanting to go to a bunch of self-help things and going to them for ulterior reasons lasted for a while, but it kind of started then.
So let's talk about once. Like, what's like one thing you would go to see a counselor for?
Why I was alive.
So you're in elementary school and you go to the counselor at school and you'd ask them why you're alive?
Yeah. Well, yeah, and it wasn't out of some sort of suicidal ideation, or
it was a genuine question.
It was a
like
genuine.
How like a kid would ask, like, why are babies born, or like why
yeah. I mean, in a way, I began to see past consensual reality when the answers I was given continued to build a consensual reality for me. And I don't think that that's uncommon. I think that
so you wanted answers that would so you're asking a question that you now see as outside of consensual reality, and they would give you answers that reaffirmed consensual reality.
Maybe a better way to phrase it is I wanted answers to consensual reality because I didn't quite understand them. Which, in a sense, if you're asking a question about reality, and the standard of that is consensual reality, is what everybody does when they question reality. But it was...
So how would you define consensual reality?
The reality that we all agree upon. Okay. So that we are what we are, that you have
we are people living on this earth.
Yeah, and
in
you have
this society, in
like
this
sensory
country.
organs and stuff, and da 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 da. And, I perceive based on what I see and off of my senses and off of the past dictations of other people and stuff.
I think that's a big one is perceiving based on your five senses.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well,
So it's sort of external, perceiving external things.
so the thing that never made sense to me when I was younger was not just why we had senses, but it was almost like an inability to see them as being shared. Like it wasn't like I didn't have the capacity to form or understand empathy, and that other people experience the sensations that I did differently, but instead I didn't quite understand. I like it's almost like I didn't understand the very normal patterns of being a person who even exists in consensual reality, doesn't even just, not even one who questions it. I mean, like like you think of like the trope is of the most annoying conversation with a child when you're an adult, right? When they ask you why, and they ask you why,
yeah.
And I did play that somewhat. It wasn't with the intention of asking why even, but it was like a genuine. I'd say curiosity, but I think it was a genuine not understanding of why people like ate the way they did, or spoke the way they did, or why you used your hands to touch, or why smelling was smelling, like.
So yeah, it's all the things that have built up over time in society. Be like, this is how you do things, and that are taken for granted.
Well, it was strange. Like
you granularly questioned each one of those.
Yes, like it didn't. Like what would be intuitive to one person, like, hey, this muffin. Smell these muffins. And then somebody would, like, even a kid isn't going to say, well, what is smell? But they would just smell the muffin automatically, right?
Yeah.
Like that didn't make sense to me. Or like I wouldn't smell the muffin when they said smell the muffin. Like I'd understand I could smell it with my nose, and then I could use my nose to smell it. But
did you not see the value in it?
I didn't see that as being the only function of the nose. like I perceive a muffin. I'd perceive a muffin, and then I would, instead of smelling it when they say smell the muffin, maybe touch it, or taste it, or would like crumble it up and like make something, like just make it into a muffin ball or muffin pile, and be like, and that's smell, right? And they're like, this person's not going to be able to function. Like I remember being in preschool, and I know this is common, like kids, you learn by basic behavioral conditioning. If I tell you don't touch the stove because it's hot, you don't know that it's hot right until you experience.
Yeah, you don't know what hot actually is.
Yeah, and so you touch and you're like, oh, I'm never fucking touching that again. But it was kind of different, where like I had seen somebody else touch a stove before, and I hadn't even touched a stove before, and had known what it felt like to touch a hot stove and had been burnt. But I still remember like in preschool, I put my entire arm on it, and like left it there. And anyways, it was a very disgusting thing what happened, but I mean painful and visceral, and just
yeah, you burned your arm.
Burned my arm. But like that didn't even seem right to me. Like it didn't seem so straightforward as it was held. Like basically what began to do it for me, or I guess what was the undoing of me relating just to consensual reality, was that the very basic, kind of almost like the bromides that everybody relates to each other, are that they're manualed out, they're cataloged in like a game or something. Like I'm playing Pikmin. And I'm like, well, why is it that Pikmin come out of the ground? Like, why is it that you throw a Pikmin there? Inside the Pikmin universe, it's like, well, because, like, you know, and of course, Olimar discovers Pikmin. I'm pretty sure he discovers the Pikmin. He's like, oh, and then he learns how to use the Pikmin and stuff, and like that's the learning process of Pikmin. But like, if you asked him midway in, you were like, hey, why did Pikmin get plucked out of the ground and thrown at weird toad monsters? He'd be like, oh, because of these reasons that I've studied. I'm now a Pikmin scientist. And in the same way, in reality, where it's like, well, why do you light a fire? It's like, well, we keep ourselves warm, and then we also use it to cook food so that it's more digestible and stuff. It always felt like I like made it there too late, and then even though I understood where it started, still it didn't seem right. It felt like I was still questioning the game at that same point when you're learning how to play the game. And it wasn't that I never like wasn't able to play the game. I can play the game right now, but it doesn't make any like inherent sense to me, and it never has, it never did. So I think that my removal from consensual reality was that I didn't feel that I ever started there and moved in it. I always felt like I was observing it from enough of a distance to be a bit uncomfortable.
Interesting. It almost kind of feels to me like, you know how things in science don't really become laws or theories. Uh-huh. And it's like people are telling you, like, this is the law of fire, this is the law of this. Yes. And you weren't able to see it past a theory because you could see, like, well, maybe if I did it again, it would disprove it. Yeah. Maybe if I did it this way,
maybe
it would
there's a way to prove fire cold. And in a sense, there is a way for me to transmute hot to cold, but it's kind of beyond that. It's like fire in its current state, with you putting your hand in it, will always burn your hand. And I'm like, but not even just maybe not. It's like there should be a way to experience fire on your hand and have your hand convert the fire that's now burning your hand into ice or something. I think it was maybe just always like, you know, you could definitely attribute that to heavy imagination or autism or schizophrenia or something like that. But I've seen those things. I've witnessed people living in those minds and with those minds. And I know what the difference looks like. And for me, it's definitely always been this way, where a good example too is, and I was gonna write this collection of poetry I told you about, where I give you a set of instructions for everything. I give you a set of instructions for how to turn on a light switch or turn off a light switch. I give you a set of instructions how to blink your eyes. Because that would have been more helpful. If somebody said, you blink your eyes for these reasons, and this is how you blink your eyes. Here's the effectiveness of blinking your eyes this way. If I had, and even more so, I wish I just wrote an instruction. I could write instructions for everything. If that was presented to me, it would make plenty more sense. Relying on an instinctive, impulse to blink my eyes isn't enough for me to blink my eyes. Like, I remember there were also times where I'd leave my eyes open and be like, why not blink my eyes? And then I'd learn why not blink my eyes, but just also without much knowledge behind it, right? I mean, it's like, oh, okay, I see, this hurts. Oh, okay, I need to blink my eyes.
Do you think you were born without instinct?
No, I don't think so. I mean, I still have the instinct to crawl to my mother, and I still have the instinct to eat, but I think maybe the instinct I was born with more so was to, I guess, relate to it differently. I don't know. I've talked to some people who get parts of this, but it feels that way very much. Like when it feels like every doorway that I walk through it's the first time I'm walking through the doorway, even if I remember how to walk through the doorway. There's this thing that I did once where I imagined a memory palace. Memory palace.
Yeah, the Sherlock Holmes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's a useful memory tool. But I imagine a memory palace, and I imagine myself.
Can you just real quick just say what that is, just in case.
Yeah, a memory palace, or like a Roman room, is it's a visualization technique that you use to remember information. So the way that you picture a Roman room or memory palace typically is in visualizing a physical space with rooms, so a house or a palace, but normally you'll start with one room, and you'll fill that room with objects, and each of those objects is associated with a piece of information. So you look at an object and you say, okay, that object represents last week having drinks with James, or the 10 questions on my quiz for calculus. That's going to be kept in that single chess piece. And the idea is that you visualize the Roman room, and every time that you return to one of those pieces, you are to recall the information that you associated with it.
Do you think it takes a certain type of mind for that to be effective, or do you think that's something that can sort of generically be used by anyone?
I think that it's been proven to work for the people it's been proven to work for. I think that there are some people that have like if you have brain damage to like your hippocampus and like your visual cortex and stuff, the parts of your brain that would allow for you to visualize and remember information, then yeah, that would be a pretty big impediment. So in that sense, I think a memory palace isn't always effective, but it's generally effective with anyone who has the capacity to visualize, to picture 3D space mentally, and for anybody who can recall information or associate information to visual things. So yeah,
so essentially more for visual learners, it's a better way to remember.
I think for visual learners, it's a great way to remember. I think also generally for people, the other thing you could do, of course, is I would suggest as well is you can embed. I think that you can embed information inside of things around you without having. You can have a physical Roman room that you live in without having to visualize one. So your bedroom could be your Roman room, and every object in your room could represent something else if you have trouble visualizing. Or if you're looking at text, that text could be associated with something else. So in a way, your short bridge to remembering something can be just association through objects.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Like if I look, like let's say
it's a little confusing how you do that with words because those already have separate meanings.
Definitely.
But I mean I see that theoretically how that could, like conceptually I can see how that could work.
Right, or I mean a good example too is, I mean people do it all the time. If I'm listening to a song, and the lyrics of the song have a particular meaning to me, that is different than the intended meaning of the song. I'm associating meaning with that, and I remember it each time that I read those lyrics.
Totally. Yeah, I mean, songs for me have always been little nostalgia windows where, like, I go, like, a song comes on, I'm like, oh shit, I remember this day in high school when, like, I first heard this. Or, like, I remember this week when we were, you know, in this place doing whatever it was, and we were listening to that song all week. That's for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Interesting. I like the idea of every time you walk through a door, it feels like it's the first time you walked through it. And I can see how that's also a double-edged sword, because I can see how that's constantly disorienting. But it's also, there's a beauty in that of, like, you're always experiencing everything for the first time. And I feel like that's, I mean, at least for me, but I think that's kind of what everyone wants, because that's when it's the best time, is like the first time you do it. Mm-hmm. So it's kind of like you're always having the best time, because it's always the first time. Mm-hmm. But it equally is equally disorienting of, like, what the fuck is going on at the same time. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a weird concept for me.
Yeah,
because I chase that mm-hmm. feeling of like of walking through the door for the first time. Like that's something I've always chased in my life. Of like I always want to do new things because that's how I get to experience that. Mm-hmm. and I feel almost a bit of jealousy at that, like, you have that all the time, though I know that's unfair because I can see as much of a downside to that as I do an upside.
In a way, in a way, reliving a new experience every time becomes monotonous.
Yeah, I see that.
And that might seem like a clever play on meaning by saying, oh, anything repeated can become monotonous. But
what's even like when on the first episode when we were talking about when I was traveling, the spontaneity, because I was traveling for so long, being spontaneous became the routine and then became monotonous. So it's I see that 100%.
I mean, there are times when I think that the newness of walking through a doorway is like having deja vu, in that I'm not able to say with absolute certainty why this experience feels new to me. And in a way, it feels like it's exactly the same in its newness. So
because it's not actually new.
Yeah. And like, so I'll walk through a doorway, or any doorway, and yes, every doorway may be different. But I mean, if I'm looking straight ahead right now, you have two doorways. You have one from your living room, and then one into your kitchen. And the one in the kitchen is about like one half the size of the one in the living room. Like, yes, those are two different doorways, and in a sense, one is new to the other. But like, even still, when I walk through this doorway, it isn't, I feel like I've walked through this doorway in your house for the first time. It's like, oh, I'm walking through a doorway in theory right now. And that is still new. It's basically like none of it has become solidified as being something. So that walkway right now that I'm describing isn't a solid walkway. It's in theory still a walkway. When you just talked a moment ago about, I mean, physics is very much this way, where you don't actually have real proofs necessarily. You just, everything is considered theory because it's difficult to continue to prove something in physics, especially if you talk to anybody who talks about quantum mechanics, because when they talk about quantum mechanics, like, unanimously they're like, this makes no sense, and we acknowledge that. Like, you go to a lecture,
quantum anything is a strange thing that I've never. So is it almost a physical thing, or when you're walking through a physical doorway, you're seeing like the atoms and the components and the things that make it up, or is it more abstract, where it's like, so, well, what is a doorway? Well, why am I walking through it? Well, is it?
I don't know if it's either of those. I think it's more. I can't prove that I'm walking through a space right now. I can't prove that I'm walking through a doorway right now. I can't prove with any degree of certainty at all.
Interesting. Do you feel the need to prove it, or have you just accepted that, like, you can't and it is what it is?
It's like having. It's sort of like having gunpowder in your cheek from being, and this again, relatable experiences.
Examples, yes.
But it's like having gunpowder in your cheek, and every day you look in the mirror and you see it, and you get used to it. But also, this is a very stark reality that you've been faced with, and that you now have gunpowder in your cheek. Like, I bear with it, and I stick through it, and I see it every day, and I'm fine with it. It's still really stark. Or it's like aging, and your knees hurting. At a certain point, the old man who maybe hasn't retired and still good at his job is like, well, fuck it. This is my knees now. My knees are now this. Painful. I now associate pain with knees and my knees with pain. But I still go on and I do things. So in a pretty real way, it's bearing with it. But also, it's really there. I haven't given up on disproving everything or proving everything. But I've kind of given up on it taking up so much space in my focus. Still, though...
Can you
Yeah.
tell me about some times that you've tried to disprove or prove, like what that looks like?
Well, I mean, that's slippery, because if I try to prove something and I say that the reasonable way to prove something is by X, then I have to prove that X is a reliable thing to base something on. So it ends up kind of turtling down forever.
Okay.
So
if I prove this by doing this,
Yeah.
then I need to prove that this works to prove this by doing this, and then I need to prove that works to prove that by doing that.
The main goal has been, I think, the only result that someone can look for is an absolute. If you had an absolute to relate everything to, and with certainty that thing is right.
Is there an absolute? Does something exist that's absolute?
I think that the most reasonable thing that you could call absolute would be a waveform, in the sense of...
Wasn't everything a waveform, really?
Yeah, I mean, like in the sense of electrical current, in computer science, binary, in neuroscience, on and off firing of neurons.
Interesting. Because I've always said like the thing that connects everything, like the one real thing, is vibrations, and that's kind of a similar. I think I think we're talking about a similar thing. Where like all things are just vibrating other things. So it's just like everything's made up of just things vibrating.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I always like how the Saturday morning breakfast cereal talks about how basically he just always reduces talking to just wobbling air, like little. For sure, which is
that's what it is, and we have a receptor in our ear.
Yeah.
That's always what I've when people talk about like vibes, and you can sort of feel things that click with you.
Yeah.
I think it's just things that are sort of vibrating in a complementary way that you're also vibrating. Mm-hmm. And I very much think that that's a real thing. Where like,
I agree.
You look at someone or like you talk to someone, and you have this instant like, oh, that works. Like it clicks.
Well, how funny would it be?
And it's some sort of resonant vibration.
How funny would it be that all of your experiences could be reduced to the color blue? And let me elaborate. What if you were so... What if you were just innately receptive to the color blue? Because...
almost in a way where you're colorblind and only see blue, or just blue just stands out and is more vibrant and whatever than everything else?
Yeah, but like let's say for instance, there's this girl, and you met her in 2004 at a Bell Share concert. Okay? And you remember her as the clever, witty girl who reminded you of the main love interest from Good Will Hunting, and that's why you fell in love with her. And you guys have a very full, long, great relationship. Full of its ups and downs, don't get me wrong, but great. And also the sex, it was phenomenal. It was unlike anything you ever had. You guys played with whips, tails, all kinds of stuff. Point being, it was a pretty fun experimental relationship. I'm not going to get into how it ended in flames, but the point is that it was great. This hypothetical relationship. This actually is a hypothetical, and that made it sound like it wasn't.
But it sounds real. But
yeah. But let's just say that happened. And at the end of the relationship, you're thinking about all the great things, and you're looking back and all this other stuff. And you're alone in your apartment, and you're going through your fridge, getting some food, and you find this little package of blueberries. And you're like, oh, I love blueberries. And let's say that her name was... did I give her a name? Her name's Julia. And let's say you get...
Hypothetically.
Yes. Let's say you get out the blueberries, you set them on the countertop, you take a blueberry, you put it in your mouth, and you cum your pants. And you're like, wow.
I was going to say you fuck them, but that's more magical.
And you're like, wow, blueberries. Who would have thought? Blueberries make me cum my pants. So then you have a few more blueberries. You're like, oh, God, these are great. And then you bring the blueberries to your bedroom, and you're just eating them in this fucking gluttonous passion. And
like a blue blood orgy.
A blue blood orgy in the middle of eating these blueberries, and they're so satisfying. At the top of your lungs, inside your inner monologue in your head, you scream, Julia. And you're thinking about it, and you're like, why... Did Julia give me these blueberries? Do I have any special memories about blueberries? And you start looking back. And you look back through the relationship. And like, maybe this is the point. Maybe my brain was just trying to find me a way to reflect on this. Maybe I didn't work through something. And you're looking back. And you remember the first time that you met her, and she was wearing a blue shirt. and you're thinking about it more and more, and you remember all of the other shirts she wore. Red, orange, I just start naming colors. And you start to think about those experiences. You think about when all the fights were, and all the fights were in times where she wore yellow, pink, gold, never blue. And you remember the first time that you guys told each other that you loved each other, and she was wearing a blue sash. And you start thinking about it, and you start asking yourself, what is it with the color blue? What is it about blue berries that made me cum my pants? What the fuck is this? And ultimately, you're not able to know this because you're in my hypothetical, or I'm in this hypothetical, whoever's in this hypothetical, blue is the thing, unlike anything else, that fixates you. That blue is the thing that you love. That blue is the thing that your brain falls in love with, comes to... I mean, how many times can we get this come in this podcast? But point being, blue is something that you're in love with. And all of that is because of the particular wavelength of blue. And you love it, and your brain loves it, and that's that. I guess the point I'm trying to make is, I think that there's something really great in looking for an absolute. There's something great in finding it in waveforms, and I think that there's an argument that is an absolute, kind of. But the other trouble that you find is if you really want answers, and if you try to prove closer to an absolute and relate closer to an absolute, all the things that you cherish become worthless. Not necessarily worthless, sure, but they become maybe better or worse, meaningless to you. And even if you're fine with it being meaningless...
Is it because they're not absolute? It's like you've given that the ultimate truth, the ultimate value, so that everything else is less valuable now?
In a sense, right? Like giving anything an answer, to me at least, is satisfying in theory up to the point where you solve it, right? Up to the point where you give it a definition or you give it something.
For sure. That's interesting. That's the way you just described that is kind of my biggest push away from scientific explanation. Mm-hmm. Where it's like, I find it takes the magic out of things. Mm-hmm. Like I find like when I hear like the folk tale of how the sun rises because, you know, the bluebird rode on the alligator's back across the water and whatever the folk tale is, I find that so much more, it draws me in so much more than the scientific explanation, you know, where like everything is made up of atoms and there's all, you know, all these things that the way science describes it by giving it a final answer, it makes it not fun for me anymore. It makes like it eliminates the magic of life and being alive. And I see when you say that, because I feel the same thing about most things that are scientifically explained, and I think that is the goal of science, is to find the absolutes. So I see a big parallel there for sure.
Why not then write the plot or the outline of your story with science so that it successfully fulfills your narrative-driven goals and make the story fun and exciting and magical.
For sure. Well, I mean, that's balance right there. Yeah, like
yeah.
That's as everything is.
So, right, like, if I want to have an entertaining story, giving the world that the story exists in rules, or even if those rules aren't there, like E.E. Cummings uses rules in his poems, but he also breaks a lot of them. And
is that your sneaky way of slipping in another cum?
I didn't catch that.
Just slipping in some extra cum?
Cum was in there.
Yeah.
And it was ink.
Yeah.
Point being that giving your reality rules, that whether or not it's been defined by our consensual reality around us as being the fundamental rules or not, or being the axioms that you live by or not, is helpful. But also expressing through them the abstract and the fun and the deeply human of narrative and story can be done. And I know that this is a little bit of, I don't know why I just described it this way in my mind, but this is a little bit of Misaka nip slip, but I feel like that's a perfect segue into one of the reasons why I like Misaka as an idea, and I want to talk about it for a second. In a very real way, if I was to test and experiment with my reality with things that were cold and were just numbers, I probably wouldn't be very motivated to test and experiment with my reality and play with it. But if I use narrative or story, or in this case, in this example, a Misaka, some form that's colored, some form that has character or personality or is a thing, then I'm a bit more excited to apply fact and rule to my reality. Because I say, of course, my rule is this: things live and die. Single-celled organisms die, all the way up to us, we die. And organisms way more complex than us. They all perish. And so by that rule, I say that a Misaka lives and dies. But do you see how a Misaka living and dying, and her, that Misaka living and dying, being a representation of another fact, or another experience, or another thought, or value, is more exciting and worth it and more motivating than just saying, well, things live and die. So that's how I'm conducting myself. Like, I really got to hold on to this relationship, or I got to make these choices in this relationship because this relationship lives and dies. But
For sure. Well, it's almost like you're taking this thing that is, we'll just call it fact for the sake of this conversation.
Sure.
And you're adding a bit of lore and folktale on top of it. Mm-hmm. So you're using, it's instead of using science to describe the story, you're using story to describe the science, almost, by using a Misaka to do it. Mm-hmm. Or like you're saying, like, these things are, let's call them true and facts, but I'm using this sort of, it's almost a storytelling element of, here's this version of me, here are these separate lives that are lived, and I'm going to call them Misakas and imagine them as these separate people, and you're adding, that's literally like you're creating a folktale out of a real thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's really cool. Something that I've always, like, saying that the sort of the search for absolute and the scientific explanation of things has always made it less exciting for me is strange, because if you really think about it, the scientific explanation is just as much of a story as anything else, right? Like, what all science is just as much of a faith system as any faith system that's existed before it, where, like, it's trusting the smartest people in your time to give you the answers that you can't get to on your own. And that's all religion has ever been in the past. And that's all science really is right now. So it is just as, if you really think about it, it's just as much of a story. But something about trying to find the absolute truth is a story eliminator to me, and it makes it, and it takes the magic out of it. I don't know what my point is with that, but I just wanted to draw that connection.
Yeah. I like that you called Misaka's, or viewing the Misaka thing as kind of building a folklore within your life. Mm-hmm. And I actually think that you ended up describing the Misaka thing better than we have yet, which is viewing X, whatever the thing is, as being the story of another person's life, and running through that scenario and simulating that scenario, and that person we're just calling Misaka.
What do you mean when you mean X?
Oh, anything. Like, dieting.
Okay.
Dieting. I'm trying to introduce a better ratio of macro and micronutrients to my diet so that I have more energy in a day and I expend a healthy number of calories, and my BMI is in what is considered the healthy space, whatever.
Got it.
Dieting. I just, for some reason, was just trying to explain what dieting is.
Got it.
Point being, I can view dieting as a Misaka. So when I say X, I mean any concept that you deal with, any memory you have, anything that you want to gain more insight into, anything that you want to further resolve for yourself, anything that you want to exercise.
Interesting. So instead of saying I want to go on a diet and I'm gonna eat this many calories, and it's sort of this droning scientific mundane explanation of what you need to do, you're adding the Misaka aspect to it to say I'm gonna create a version of myself that's gonna learn how to diet. And this is gonna be my diet, Misaka.
Exactly.
And I'm gonna make it as strong as I can
every
make
day.
it.
Every day I'm role playing with the Misaka.
Yeah.
So every day I wake up and I say, all right, my Misaka needs breakfast. And in some way, I mean, that's even proven to be effective in some, like there's some apps that I've heard of that introduce this idea that you have this, but usually it's a figure telling you, hey, eat your cereal. But the fun in taking care of an imaginary instance of yourself. Maybe if it's harder for you to imagine it as an imaginary instance of yourself, you could just imagine it as an imaginary instance of something, and taking care of that thing and improving that thing alongside yourself works better.
Yeah, I like that too, because it's as a Misaka has to live an entire life, right?
Yeah.
If you're creating one for dieting, it's a baby and it needs to be taken care of.
Mm-hmm.
So it gives more of a reason, almost an instinctual reason, because you want to take care of this thing that you just birthed.
Yeah.
So it's like there's this little baby Misaka that's like it's my diet Misaka, and I need to take care of it, and I need to do more so that it can reach adulthood. And that's almost like a really beautiful way to create that habit in yourself of like dieting for a long time, and then when it reaches adulthood, it's when it's become normal in you. You don't have to think about it anymore, and it can sort of take care of itself, and it doesn't need you to take care of it. I love this concept.
it's like high. I think it's probably well described also as hijacking very basic chemical processes in yourself through the use of story and imagination. So
for your own good, though.
For your own good, for sure. Yeah. I mean, if I said hijacking someone else's, it'd be different. I mean, I don't encourage anyone to use their Misaka for terrorism.
Yeah.
But
I just imagine like Captain Phillips when the guy comes in, he's like, I am the captain now, and he like just to give you another boat. He doesn't actually want to take yours.
No.
But he leaps onto your boat. He'd be like, oh, here's another boat.
Yes.
Yeah.
I'm the captain now. Also, here's your
other boat.
Yeah. But I think that's cool because, I mean, isn't that what... again, that's what we're using stories for in general. I mean...
Yeah, I mean, that's what stories been used... That's what it's been used for in all of human history is to convey wisdom and teach things from lives that have already been lived. Like the human collective knowledge, the humans before you have already learned this lesson, so they created a story to pass that lesson on so you wouldn't have to figure it out on your own. And that's really what a Misaka is. Mm-hmm. When you look backwards on your life, it's creating a story from all the shit that you've done so you don't make the same mistakes in the future and you can handle the same situations better.
That's a really... Okay, so that's an excellent point. Because
goddamn right it is.
God, I love your points. Tim Urban, the guy that made Wait But Why, who writes really great content, he talks...
Shout out Tim Urban.
Shitting out Tim Urban's. He talks about the human colossus. Like, he describes the human collective as he does the human colossus.
It's that's like our collected knowledge over time is the human colossus. I like that.
Yeah.
Because it allows you to clearly picture it as something.
Yeah, I know.
That's almost memory palacing.
It is. Yeah.
That
exactly.
Yeah, okay.
But, so he talks about the human colossus, and he talks about the passing knowledge as you just described.
Mm-hmm.
And I like thinking of the Misaka thing as a version of that anyways. And I'm basically reiterating what you just said, but I want to deepen that even some more, because your past knowledge of these selves that you're making isn't that different from relying on the people that have lived and died before you who have past knowledge, which brings us back even to viewing history as being an important thing. And it makes sense that our divide would even be that you've expressed more interest in there being value in history. And when I think about Misaka's being a corollary for that, it makes me appreciate history more too, where it's like, yeah, the history of myself help inform my current decision making. So basically, use that same concept of history being useful because of what it inherently is, and use Misaka's alongside that.
Yeah, and I think that's the most fascinating part of history, is not even studying the events and the specific things that have happened, but my favorite part about history, and I've told you this before, is finding the stories that have withstood the test of time.
Yeah.
Right? There's an inherent, there's an absolute truth to them. There's a reason that they've lasted so long. And again, you said it perfectly. It is this, the Misaka, using Misaka for yourself is the exact same thing as the human collective, the human colossus of all of our knowledge, because you're looking, just as an anthropologist would, at past human iterations and learning how they got to where they are now. You're doing that for yourself.
Yep.
Past you iterations,
Yeah.
and learning how you got to where you are now. And then, and it allows you, as an anthropologist would, to say, like, oh, this is happening in the current landscape.
Where's my fall of Rome, right? Like,
Even something as simple as, like, we are addicted to our phones because there's a certain light that triggers our brains, and it was in our past because it showed us, a reflection on water, or something that showed us safety and nutrition, or whatever thing. Like, it allows you to say there's this biological reason that we want this new thing, this phone in our face, because it helped us at this point in our past, and our brain is tricked into thinking it's that thing. It allows you to do that for yourself, to be like, oh shit, this negative scenario where I've tended to get angry, it's because that anger had this purpose in my past, but that's no longer necessary. It's now a new thing, and I'm still using this old biological tool that's wired in me to tackle this problem that it's not effective for anymore, and it allows you to do that for yourself. Yeah.
I wish. I mean, I guess at some point we're gonna have to use the camera, because we like eye contact after long sprees.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess the value in this is similar to the value that I've found in meditation.
Yeah. And
it's similar in the value that I find in a lot of things, where it's based in the idea of taking a step back.
Right.
And I think that's just such a positive, going back to our last podcast, is, the 10,000 hours to master something. That's taking a step back is such an valuable and important and positive muscle to work on. And I think it allows you to have so much more control, right? It allows you to be in the driver's seat of more things.
What would be an example of stepping back in order to have more control?
We'll go back to anger again, because I think that's a really easy one to visualize. Like, when something is pissing you off, or making you emotional, or in some way where being emotional sort of puts you in the passenger seat, where you're giving up control to this emotion, and it's going to take you where it's going to take you, and you can't choose that. Rather than if you take a step back out of that, and you just think, like, why am I angry right now? What's making me angry? Is this anger valuable? Is this helping me? Is this going to lead to the result that I want? What's the result that I want, even? And meditation is really great for that, to say, like, here's these things that I've been doing in my life. I'm going to take a step back and sort of look at them and see what the motivation is for why things are happening the way that they are. Like, what emotion is driving the choices I've been making. And by doing that, it allows you to have so much more control, not only over seeing what's happening in your life, but then when the next time it comes up, as you work on that muscle more, it only becomes more easy to take that step back, and lets you then real time, rather than when you meditate on it and go, like, oh shit, that I did that out of anger, you will then have worked that muscle out enough to be able to do it in real time, to take that step back while it's happening, rather than and getting back in the driver's seat and steering it in the way that's going to give you the result that you want.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that was all a description that made sense. Did I hope that doesn't sound like
No. I'm just
I mean, because while you're saying that, it makes me think about and like analogous thinking, like what we're doing is we keep on giving scenarios and stuff, and that it's kind of difficult to like step back unless you visualize something in the middle between the thing that you're stepping back from and where you're trying to step back to. Like, if I'm trying to step away from anger, I imagine anger driving a car and me being in a passenger seat, and that the meaning that's assumed there is that it's driving my motivations, or literally. But I mean, I'm not in control of what I am doing because emotion is. And I guess the reason why I bring up why I was thinking about analogous thinking is because with the Misaka thing, it's a way to step back pretty directly without going too far or going too cold, so that you're not motivated emotionally into it, but you're able to say, okay, so I want to regulate anger. Like I want to modulate my aggression. I want to make sure that I am not belligerent, whatever. And so I make a Misaka for that, which is my emotional regulation Misaka. And maybe that Misaka practices all kinds of different things, but the main thing is I keep on going through tests with that thing or whatever. But you notice how like I'm stepping back to view emotional regulation or anger or aggression by thinking about that thing, and that thing is an analogy, and that's like the most useful way to do it. That it's kind of difficult to sit down. It's hard to just sit down and be like, okay, now I meditate. Like I'm angry, now I meditate. It's much easier to be like, I'm angry. Well, it's because fucking Poseidon is a guy who exists who just is making me angry because the gods are kind of dicks because they're people, but also because I'm doing something wrong because I didn't, I don't know, go to the particular prayer location last Monday. I guess what I'm trying to say is that in a way, replacing the part of your brain that wants to analyze the thing, which makes it difficult to step back, but is essential to stepping back, or is essential once you do step back, fill it in with analogy and then step back.
Well, even by creating a Misaka for it, you're already stepping back.
Yeah.
So that's the beauty of it.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, and that's also why I say it's a muscle that you have to work. So you start by anger taking control, and you looking back and be like, oh fuck, like I didn't mean to do that. Yeah. I was angry. That's in just by you thinking that is a form of meditation. Mm-hmm. Right? So as you do that more, the more times you can say, oh shit, that was motivated by anger, that's why I did that thing. Mm. Oh shit, that was motivated by anger, that's why I did that thing. The closer you'll be able to do it to the actual event. So you'll start by it'll take a while. And then you'll, like, let's say it takes 3 days, and then you can finally be like, oh, I see, that was because of anger. Mm-hmm. The more you do it, then you'll be able to do it in 2 days. Mm-hmm. And then you'll be able to do it in 1 day. Mm-hmm. And then you'll be able to do it the same day. Mm-hmm. And eventually you'll be able to do it in real time while it's happening. Mm-hmm. So it is, again, it is a muscle that you work, but yeah, so I guess you were talking about the in the moment piece of it. But again, it just becomes like anything else. You just stop thinking about it. It becomes habitual. At least for me, it's started to become habitual, where I don't have to substitute anything in. I can feel it coming, because you start to become hyper aware of what the like as the anger starts to bubble. You become hyper aware of that. You can begin to feel that, and as you feel the bubble, you can go like, "Oh, this is coming. I know what happens when I feel this bubble."
Yeah.
And then rather than allowing it to then become a volcano eruption or a geyser exploding, you can stop it at the bubble.
Well, dude, this is this is logging information. This is exactly what we were just talking about the human colossus, and then relating to your memories of yourself and to your Misakas is being like the human colossus. And it keeps getting smaller and smaller. Like, for me to track how to react to aggression effectively, I have to log what the signs of aggression are and what my treatments have been.
Well, and that's exactly what you said too,
Yeah.
or that thing that I just talked about.
Yeah.
I can now apply like, oh yeah, that was me creating my emotional regulation, Misaka.
Yeah.
Like that was me. I birthed it when I was at the 3-day mark thinking about on why I did that out of anger. That's when it was born.
Yes.
And I've babied it and helped it grow
Yep.
into this thing where now it's an adult and I don't have to think about it anymore. So that's
Yeah.
exactly
Yeah.
what I did do.
Yeah.
I just didn't have the Misaka concept to apply to it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, which is good that you say that, because I was thinking about, like, it seems hard to communicate how to bird the Misaka. Like, it makes sense to have a process go through and then reflect on your experience through the Misaka idea, but it seems harder to be like, okay, now in this moment, if I'm going to work on something, I create a Misaka.
Yeah.
And then how do I start?
It has the exact same parallel as what
Yeah.
I just said with meditation, where
Yeah.
you start by maybe years, you'll look back and go like, oh shit, I created that Misaka 3 years ago.
Yep.
And then you'll be able to be like, oh shit, I created that Misaka 2 years ago.
Yeah.
Then 1 year, then 1 month. And now I just found like I can see when I created one 3 days ago.
Yeah.
And soon I'll be able to see one when I created that day. And then you'll get to real time.
Yep.
And that's when you can flip it and start creating them by choice and using them. Yeah,
That's a great.
it's the same parallel. Like Misaka is also a muscle, and being a Misaka researcher is a muscle. You have to start with research. You have to start by looking backwards and identifying them, and then you just get better and better and better at doing that to where you can do it in real time. You can be like, oh, I can feel myself creating this Misaka right now.
Yeah.
That's crazy. And then you'll be able to then say, oh, okay, I have this scenario. I need to pull this Misaka. So it starts fully in the past. It gets closer and closer and closer to present. Then you can use it in real time. And then you're able to use it for future scenarios.
Across the board, point A to point whatever, I agree.
Dope.
Love it.
Shaka, bro.
But also, I want to say on top of it, I really, really like that you can think of yourself as like a personal scholar and researcher and scientist. And we've touched on it in the first episode, but I want to say it one more time. Like, think about the number of times. Okay, for me, there have been a huge number of times where I wish that I went out of my way to get credentials that would say I can talk about a thing, because that's kind of essential for people to listen oftentimes. But what's really nice about this is you get to say, no, I'm a personal researcher of myself. Here are the Misakas I've built and researched, like, and I can share them with you. And how fucking cool is that? Because no longer do you.
There's no more motivating
Yeah.
reason to research something
Yeah.
than for your own benefit.
Yeah.
I'm sorry I interrupted you.
It's not okay.
I know.
On that bomb, no, I'm just kidding. But yeah, I mean, just the basic idea that you can be heard and valid and have reputation in your own thoughts and the things you say because you're a researcher of yourself is really cool. Because it's, I mean, in a sense, right, it's the trope of, give that person their voice, or help yourself find your own voice. But in a pretty real way, it's that. Like, the things that you say, even if they sound weird, or the number of times I say something that sounds like complete bullshit, if it's working for me and it's like something I've personally researched for myself, and yes, there's some word borrowing from scientific journals or people that have what are viewed as like actual credentials. Still, I find value in what I have to say about my own experience. So I think that's the other thing I want to say is just, I guess I want to massage that a little bit for a moment, and I'm done.
Yeah,
for
massaged. Sure. And it's also, there's a really nice piece of it is that it sort of has a very organic value progression, in that it forces you to deal with your shit first. And it forces you to be selfish, but in a way where you're not too hard on yourself. And then once that's done, once you've sort of dealt with all of your stuff and categorized your shit, and you're using this concept in real time to start to make your own life better, the beauty of that is then you can now share your research with other people. So it may start as a selfish concept to like make your life better, but it doesn't stay that way.
Yeah.
And that's the coolest part about it, is once you sort of get it down and you understand the concept, you can then share your research with other people and help them with Misakas that you may have already researched more or categorized or classified already. And then you get to go, oh, dude, I have a Misaka for this. Here's my notes. Here's my research. And help people to grow theirs faster and to use theirs more effectively. So like, yeah, it helps you not only get your shit together, but there's also a very unlimited and very easily scalable way to also help other people create more value for themselves as well.
Yeah, it's just like the repeated thing of, if you want to be able to take care of somebody else, learn to take care of yourself.
Yeah, for sure.
You don't want like a muddied Cheeto fingered. We made that before. Cheeto finger. We made that reference before.
You love your Cheeto finger. Yeah, it's the cliche of you can't love someone else unless you love yourself.
Yeah. Which, yeah, that for sure still takes time. Because I mean,
it's way harder to love yourself than someone else.
Indiana Jones fucking trap that happens is when the only way that you can love yourself is by loving someone else. If you get yourself stuck in that, there's a boulder chasing me. That is difficult. I'm just bringing that up now. Like, that's difficult when you begin to say, like, it's not even I place my value in. I view myself as valuable if other people find me valuable. It's like I only love myself if I'm in love with somebody or somebody loves me. Like that's really difficult.
And it turns it into a need, right? So
yeah.
Going back to the Indiana Jones thing, if you need to love someone else, it's just running at the same speed as the boulder.
Yeah.
And you have to keep running forever. So you have to keep loving someone else forever, or else that boulder's going to hit you.
Yep.
So yeah, it's escaping the boulder first.
When are you Indiana Jones when he? Well, I mean, okay, I guess his defining aspect is he runs away from boulders, but like, when are you Indiana Jones when he doesn't, when he's not like not retired Indiana Jones title card, but like. I'm extending this metaphor too far.
Yes.
Anyways, I agree.
Reaching at Indiana Jones straws.
Yeah.
And I guess on that bombshell, we'll catch you guys on the next one.
All right.